Welcome to the 1871 podcast, and tonight we have a very special guest. It's former Reading assistant manager Colin Lee. So welcome to the 1871 podcast, Colin. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Mark. Yeah, very well.
Great to have you with us. We've also got Johnny Hunt, as usual. Hello, Johnny.
Evening.
And I'd like to say, returning, we've got Dylan Kerr, but he's not quite returned yet. He's still on his excursion in Libya. So you're still stuck in Libya, Dylan, aren't you?
We finally, about 10 minutes ago, that's the phone just been going out. We finally confirmed that we've got a flight tomorrow to leave Benghazi, Libya, to Istanbul, to travel back to Johannesburg, where we will arrive on Thursday afternoon. So it's been absolutely an abortion of a trip. You know, we flew from Joburg to Istanbul with no tickets from Istanbul to Benghazi, because there's very limited flights, because it's a sanctioned country. It's a former war-torn country. It's been an absolute nightmare. The day of the game, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock, we were flying to Benghazi with only 11 players. We were running around like headless chickens in the airport looking for tickets, because it was honestly it was a disaster. We thought we were playing on Monday, and then we landed at 4:30 Sunday afternoon, 2.5 hour, 3 hour flight, to be taken to the stadium to play the game at 7 o'clock. But unfortunately, we lost the game 4-1. But about a minute before kickoff, I found out that we'd actually qualified for the quarterfinals, because the teams below us, they drew, so they can't mathematically catch us. So I didn't tell the players, but I'll give them credit. After the 4 days of hell from Joburg to Benghazi that we had, and I mean sleeping in airports on floors, and it's freezing. It's freezing here in Istanbul and Libya. We really had a good game. We really played really well. Credit to the boys. They didn't win the game, but they gave it the best they could, which is all you can ask for.
Well, you said that it was going to take you, when we spoke to you before you left for Libya, you said it was going to take you about 24 hours to get there. It took you a lot longer than 24 hours, didn't it?
We spent 20 hours in the transit area of the airport, and it was a big airport, but it was so cold. And obviously, we didn't pack obviously it's summer in South Africa. We didn't actually pack any warm clothing. But the worst thing is, there was no restaurants, there was no coffee shops, there was 2 vending machines that didn't take any money, and we didn't have a ticket. We couldn't get out of it. We had to eventually phone the South African ambassador of Istanbul to come and get us into the airport accommodation. Yeah, but that took like 22 hours.
So you're not actually home yet, are you? Where are you now?
Still in Benghazi. I'm still in Libya. It's been an amazing experience, Colin. You won't believe it.
All right. We're talking to Colin. Colin, really, really pleased to have you with us. You know, you alluded to it when we were chatting before the episode started. What a fantastic team that was. What a great time to be a Reading fan. And I know that Johnny agrees with me, and Dylan was part of that team. So I know Dylan's keen to talk to you, but just take us back to your kind of main memories of that time and that team that you put together, Colin.
I think, you know, initially I joined Reading as a youth team coach. I was youth team coach for about 5 days, I think. And John Hazelden was actually coaching the first team. And I think Mark quickly recognized some of my ability on the training field, and asked me to join the senior team. John was our physio anyway, and John took obviously a step backwards in terms of coaching, although he still assisted us with warm-ups and stuff to start with. And then we started to piece together a team, not just compete in that league, but to try and win that league. It was Mark and I had a lot of a lot of meetings, you know, a lot of discussion, usually on a Thursday after training, sometimes on a Wednesday morning early, because obviously the training sessions leading into games, the detail would start on a Thursday. But Thursday afternoon, it was deep conversation in terms of the team that we were going to put out and the players that we were trying to improve and identify new players, you know. So it was quite a long stretch of, can I say, planning, you know. It was a lot of planning. We had, obviously, Mark and myself had good contacts within the game, so that helped with certain players. But we watched, I mean, I can remember flying up to Newcastle, watching a game, flying back and starting work the next day. I can remember being on the motorway and almost falling asleep coming back from watching players, you know. I can remember the Jimmy Quinn. I was at West Ham one night and Quinny came on as a substitute. And I said to Mark, if ever he comes up on the market, we've got to get him, like, you know. And he went to Bournemouth. That was a mistake, which I think Jim admitted. And eventually we got him. But I've got loads of stories on loads of players, you know. You know, Simon Osborne, who I know Dylan spoke to a few weeks back on the programme. I went to Brentford. It was Roy Clare's testimonial, the physio there who I knew from Watford. And I went to support Roy in his testimonial. And I watched Crystal Palace playing Brentford, you know, and I saw this small midfield player who just stood out to me. You know, we were looking, Kevin Dillon was coming to the end of his career, really, Kevin, who was a fantastic player for us. But we needed that midfield player. We've always had that midfield player who could control the game, if you like, you know, who we could play through. And Simon Osborne fitted that to an absolute T. You know, he was a great player, Simon, in his own way, you know. So there's loads of stories, but the team, the balance to the team was what was the secret, I think, you know. And you know, we had pace in the right areas. We had aggression at the right time. You know, Phil Parkinson comes to mind. And we had, for me, the key to everything we done was Darius Dovcek, you know. I mean, he was an unbelievable signing. Of a game we seen in a pre-season game up in Scotland. He'd been relieved by Celtic, and we sat with the Rangers assistant manager, who Mark knew, and this guy was shooting from corners with his left foot. You know, it was incredible. You know, and I said to Mark, "Who's that guy?" You know, and anyway, after the game, we stayed behind to speak to the agent, and Darius was invited down to play in a pre-season friendly, which he did. And I'd taken the team over to Leatherhead with Daley Thompson involved, and phoned back to say, how did Simon Osborne do and how did Darius Dovcek? He said, well, I've got Dovcek locked in my office at the moment and he's not going anywhere, you know. So
Colin, I just want to ask you, obviously you could go through that whole team, brilliant players, but I want to ask you what your first impression of Dylan Kerr was.
Fucking hell, don't know. I'm going. This is a good question. That's a good question because I've never known. I never knew.
Well, Dylan, as you know, had a fantastic left foot. He was sort of defensively, it was something that we thought he needed to improve on, but we had a team that were able to protect that as well, you know, and so Dylan's ability really was his left foot. I mean, it was the balance to the team we needed. Playing behind Michael Gilks, I think it was. Gilks, he had the pace. Gilks, he was still, in my opinion, we you know, my job really was to not just mow together the team, but also, in my opinion, my belief as a coach is that to try and improve every player, you know. And if you can improve every player, by a small percentage and your team improves by a big percentage. And I think that, I think we did that with Reading. I think that every player, whether they're already there or the players that arrived, I think we improved them players. But going back to Dylan was a good player going forward. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I know his goal scoring record is not great because I had a look at it last night, but he's
bloody ones.
Sorry?
They were good ones.
Oh, they were great ones, yeah.
Especially when you picked me to play right back at Plymouth.
Well, yeah, I can't remember that, but no, I think it is, and not just that. You also need players that are infectious, and Dylan will tell you I'm not one for sort of saying things that I don't believe in, but Dylan was infectious, and he was a character in the changing room, someone who was sort of a bubbly character, and it was something that helped the team. It helped the team in terms of just going out on the training field, always bubbly, always talking, always sort of geeing people up and having a joke with them. And I think it's really important to get that side of the team correct. If you've got great team spirit, and Dylan brought that team spirit with him, with his personality, and I think for me that's a big plus to any team to get that balance correct.
Yeah, Dylan, I want to obviously let you respond to that, but let me bring Johnny in. Johnny, what do you want to ask Colin? And then I think we'll let Dylan and Colin have a little catch-up chat, I think, after that.
Absolutely. No, I was going to say, Colin, was Reading's best ever teams have had a great management team. We've had Steve Coppell, Brian McGhee, the assistants that they had did the job. What was it between you and Mark that was so special that made it work?
I think that it was the way in which I think an assistant manager has to be very, very honest and very upfront. And Dylan will tell you that that's the type of person I am, and if I didn't agree with something, then I don't agree with it. I'd say the reasons why. And this is why Mark and I were locked in the Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening discussions quite often, picking the team, because if Mark was talking about going one way and I didn't agree with it, I wouldn't agree with it. And I would give him the reasons why. And then when it went on quite late some evenings, we would go and sleep on it. And then he'd come back and say, well, I'd like to go this way, but I agree with you on that way. And no one knew about this, and no one would ever know about it, because if we went that way and it didn't work and we had to change it, we had to change it. We had plan A, B, C, whatever, But I think it was I've always said that the assistant manager shouldn't be a yes man. And I think Dylan will agree, I'm not a yes man, and I think that is really, really important in any relationship in terms of managing football teams. I've managed football teams, and some of my assistant managers, I look back and think shouldn't have employed him. And I look at others, and one in particular, and he was 100% correct. And he was my youth coach, and he's still one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And he was honest with me. He would go, Colin, no, I don't think that's right, or whatever, and then I would make the final decision. Mark would make the final decision, but at least you were honest and upfront. And I think that's why it was successful. I think that's why it was successful.
Correct, isn't it?
No, it worked. It worked. It did work. I mean, the magic that they created in the dressing room, the chemistry that they had, it was like, you would have a laugh and joke with the gaffer, but you would never have a laugh and joke with Colin, because he was very methodical, and he was very, very precise and that's one of the key contents of my coaching, is that the preciseness of what you do in training related to the game that you're playing. And now in them days, you're only playing one game a week, maybe the odd game midweek.
Yes.
But what Colin did and what Mark did, they had this chemistry between them that they understood where we were as players. But if we stepped out of line, if we did something wrong, Mark would get angry, but you wouldn't look at Colin Lee in the face. You would never look him eye to eye. I think Eddie Williams did once and didn't come off the best of it. But but that was the beauty of it. It was like I'm a newcomer at Elm Park. Your first person you meet is the first people you meet is the manager and the assistant manager. And I've always been a Colin Lee fan since a kid, watching him play at Spurs. He reminded me of one of my dad's teammates in a Sunday pub football team called Spud Taylor. He scored goals for fun, and he played with that enthusiasm, as he said about me, with that infectious enthusiasm and energy as a striker. So, but when we were working, and we trained at a beautiful place, Coombe Park. The training facility was amazing. Just driving in there was different class. But everything was done correctly to the team that they picked. And like I said, we only worked, really on a Wednesday, probably on Thursday and Friday with the starting 11. But the competition was there. The battle to play in that team was there. And I think you did your own work very, very well, Colin, because you signed a good team of players and a good squad of players.
Yeah, and to be honest, Dylan, there wasn't a lot of money either, So
No.
if you take it all into account, Phil Parkinson, I think, was 15 grand or something, or 30 grand or something, and Parky, I can remember Parky coming along, and his brain was all about competitor, kick anything that moved, win the ball back, and that was it. And I basically, cutting a long story short, I can remember, and I'll always remember this, he came up to me, I think we were playing Huddersfield away, and I think we might have already won the league, or we were going to win the league anyway, or whatever. And he said to me, "Can I have a word with you on my own?" And I said, "Well," I thought, what does he want, So I went off, and he said, "Can I just want to shake your hand and thank you for making me into more of a complete player?" He said, "Because all I thought about was winning the ball and heading it and kicking anything, that moved, trying it." He said, "But you slowed me down. You said, now you've got the ball. Now we've got to keep it. Now we've got to do this, So, and he said to me, obviously with having Osborne beside him and people like that, who always wanted the ball, but Parky became a complete player, a more complete player who understood that yes, out of possession, you were really, really good. In possession, there's no good winning the ball and then giving it straight back to the opposition. In possession, we now need to be players, So they were like tigers, if you like, out of possession, and then they calmed down and became, whatever, in a more controlled manner. And I'll never forget that, a player coming up to you and saying that is a great thing, and as I said just now, if you can, as a coach, get recognized for improving every player in your team and in your club in a positive way, then really that is a big part of your job,
Well, that's, and like I've always said to the guy, whenever I've done these podcasts, we're always, with former players, former coaches, we talk about that dressing room. We had a way of playing, a system of playing.
Yeah.
We had, obviously, Shaka in goal was just he just blossomed and grew. You had, before Andy Bernal came, you had Ray Ranson, you had Eddie Williams, Keith McPherson, Jeff Hopkins.
Yeah.
Before Dan came, you had myself, who didn't want to not play. I always wanted to play after racing 4 Leeds, although I did love my time at Leeds. And then you had me and Jiltsy, you had Ray Ranson and Scotty Taylor, you had Parky, Kevin Dillon, Tom Jones, then Ozzy came, you had Quinny and Archie.
Yeah, Mickey Gooden as well, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, I'm sorry, Geordie.
Yeah,
Mickey. Yeah. He's still playing now, but I mean, he was the energy. He was the at his age, he was the energy.
Yeah.
And even he played at right back. He would play. Jeff Hopkins would play at right back. You got the right balance on the left, on the right, the two central defenders. Who would think that Keith McPherson, the captain, would be the steady centre back? Eddie Williams, everything in the air, and everybody complemented each other, and that's because of what we did in training. That's because, as a coach, you go to different teams and you see different coaching methods and you see different ways of coaching. But I said, you were the coach. You were the one that put the sessions together.
Yeah.
And that's what I take on board now. Even though I'm head coach, I still try and do the assistant coach bit, really, because I want to, be in control, even though I've got an assistant, because it works and it's successful, and we were successful.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of planning gone into that. I used to do a lot of pre-planning on sessions to make you play. We would play from the back, and we would play through the midfield, but we also knew that we had the speed and the energy in the wide areas, and we had a combination, two strikers up front, one in particular, who, if you got the ball in the right areas, Jimmy Quinn would score goals, And I can remember, I don't know if you can remember, Dylan, but I can remember, because Quinny was a bit of a soaker at times, and I think I can remember putting together a finishing session, which we called the Jimmy Quinn finishing session, where you always pulled off in between, so the balls were arrowed in between, if you like,
Yeah.
And of course, Quinny walked off like 10 feet tall because it was all around him. You know what I mean? But it was the way we played, and it was playing to our strength, and our strength was getting the ball to Jimmy Quinn in the right areas in the 18-yard box, and 9 times out of 10, Jimmy Quinn would score. Archie was a great finisher. What I think on the angle, when you're outside of the far post or the near post, whichever side, he could always find that other corner, and I felt that he was a little bit of an unsung hero, really, in some ways, because he sort of, he came short and played, which is what a lot of the strikers do now. So he was playing in between, if you like, in between the lines at times, and as you know, if he came short, then someone like Mickey Gooden would go long, and the option and the marking was very difficult. So Jilksy, get the ball to Jilksy, leave him on 1v1 and use his speed. His biggest problem, I think, when I analysed him, was consistency more than anything. I had a question on that yesterday come through from someone, and I said Michael Jilks was a really good player for us, and take nothing away from him, but his consistency was something we worked on, and it's not always working on the football pitch with someone like that. Sometimes it's working mentally with him. What's expected of you. You're creating goals, but when the ball's on the opposite side, we expect you to come in and score goals and stuff like that. So mentally, we work with Jilksy. He might not have recognised that at the time, but he was a great player for us. He balanced us, and when he went out of the team, it was difficult to get that balance. But we then had to play a different way, because sometimes we use someone with the right foot, like Mickey Gooden, who come in off the line and played into a striker and, played off him, if you like, So, yeah, I mean, I love working there. I mean, it was a fantastic period. John Medeski, has to take a lot of credit for it as well, because John supported a lot of the stuff that we wanted to do. He never really interfered at all. Just let us get on with the job, and I think he enjoyed that period. I can remember going to Blackpool. I don't know if you were there then, when we absolutely hammered Blackpool, and we were actually cheered off the park by Blackpool fans.
Excuse me. I scored that day.
Oh, was that the goal you scored? I thought about that.
Yeah. with my right foot. With my right
foot. Colin, I know Dylan's got loads more questions for you, but I want to bring Johnny back in. But first, before Johnny comes back in, I've got a question for you from a Reading fan, Andrew Morris. And what he wants to know is, obviously, we've talked about it on the podcast a lot. So you had that fantastic Reading team, and then you had Steve Coppell's team, Brian McDermott's team. So Andrew Morris, his question to you, Colin, is you talked there about the team that you produced, but out of all of the successful Reading teams over the last kind of 30 years or so, which do you think, who do you think produced Reading's best team and style of play? And you can say your team if you want, yours and Mark's team, but he's interested to know from your perspective what you think about what Reading went on to do, and are they different teams, or what do you think about that?
I think that to be honest, before I went to Reading, I didn't really follow Reading that much. I've got to be honest with you. So I can, I think that the team that we put together, and I know it's quite what can I say, a sentence I'm going to say now. I think that team should have went to the Premier League, and I think in any team setup, I mean, I know the best team I played with at Chelsea, and it had the right mixture. And I know people talk about mixtures and all that, but we had that at Reading when we developed that team. Dylan mentioned Keith McPherson just now. When Keith McPherson came out of the team, Darius Dovcek went into the team, and that was another balance to the team. It was a so I think that that team that we put together had the capability of going to the top league, and it didn't happen. It was sad it didn't happen. I understand that, and we can't reel back, but I can honestly say that I think that team possibly is the team that had a tremendous balance, a great team spirit, a determination, and a mentality of winning. And I think overall, I think that would probably be my choice.
And Johnny, your chance to come back in now, because I know that Dylan's got loads more he wants to talk to Dylan about. So go on then.
Colin, this is an interesting one. I hope you don't mind me asking. You talked about the mental side and the inconsistency there with Gilksy, but one of them I mentioned was James Lambert.
Yeah.
He's probably one of our most skillful but frustrating players. What do you make? Like, you had him with you there when he was a bit younger. Was he hard to work with? Was it just being young that he didn't go the way he should?
James Lambert, I forgot about James Lambert, to be honest. Yeah, he had great ability. But ability alone doesn't make you a football player, When I went to Wolves, we had a young player called Robbie Keane.
Who?
And Robbie Keane was 16 when he came into. Well, he was younger, but at 16 he got into the first team squad. And Robbie Keane had a mentality like a 25-year-old. He had so much belief in his own ability that it was. I wouldn't say it was frightening, but it was fantastic to see. And so I think James Lambert possibly, it's nothing to do with his ability. It was to do possibly with his application and his mentality. And mentality is massive in football. If you lack slightly in an ability, you can make that up with determination. And I've always said that to players who I've worked with. And I work with a lot of young players down in this part of the world for 6 years. From under 13s downwards, I ran a school down here for Chelsea, and we tried to educate them correctly and make them into winners, really determined to become successful. Yeah. And I think if you've got that 100% commitment, if James Lambert had a Robbie Keane brain, if you like, football brain, not so much football brain, but ambitious brain, if you like, the brain to want to really be successful, and James Lambert would have been. Yeah. There's so many players who you could talk about and I've seen it throughout my career in football. I've seen players better than me at youth level not make it. Why?
Sorry, Colin. Dylan's dying again. When you're looking at a player, as you did when you scouted all around, what was it? How much percentage is it football, and how much is it the background stuff, the mentality that makes you go, "Yep, that's the fit for our club"?
Well, I think it's a little bit like a jigsaw. You know what will fit into it. I think in certain positions you're looking for different abilities, but I think I think when I look at a player and I'm looking at a certain position, I know what I want in that position, and if that player shows me enough, I think that once I get him into my club, I think that I can affect his mentality in a positive way.
Yeah.
Work with him on the training field, introduce perhaps different types of training that he's not really been used to, and get him sort of actively enjoying his training, but knowing that what we're doing is making him a better player, so yeah, you can see the abilities you want and the balance you want, and then you do your own work behind the scenes. You speak to people and you find out whether he's got the right attitude, whether he's a good person to work with, whatever. We did that with I keep talking about Phil Parkinson, but Phil Parkinson, I mean, Dave Merrington, who had Phil at Southampton, and Dave is the person I spoke about earlier. He was my youth team coach, and he was my assistant manager, and the best I've ever had. And I phoned him about Parky and said, like, this boy Parkinson, like he's going to be released, or is he available? He said, yeah. He said, Colin, he'll break down a wall for you. And I said, that's fine. That's fine. That'll do me. He said he'll do anything you ask him to do. He's an unbelievable person, blah, blah, blah. And I'd seen him play, and I said, that'll do me. That'll do me.
I think as you're talking about Parky, I think one of the things you should feel proud of, and I don't know if you know this, but knowing Parky since, obviously since Reading, and he's gone on to manage different clubs, I think you've became part of his makeup in his management style. I think your influence on him in that short period of time at Reading has influenced him into his managerial career. And I know he's not had the best of teams that he's been with, and obviously he's left. But I can see it in his character, in his characteristics when I'm with him, when I'm back in England, when I meet him. I can see a characteristic in him that I saw a characteristic in you. And I think, and we spoke about it before. We always speak about it. Whether I'm speaking to Shaka, whether I'm speaking to Ozzy or Jill or anybody, we always speak about the fact that when you and Mark left, we took. You speak about this jigsaw. I couldn't remember who was telling me about the jigsaw, and you just reminded me now, because this is what I tried to tell my chairman and my team when we're selecting players, and with millions of African players here.
Yeah.
Paul. And you have to pick the right ones. But the chairman here just signed willy-nilly, and you've got to try and fit a round peg into a square hole. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But one of the compliments I think from me when I see Parky, when he's on the sideline, when I'm in talking to him, is kind of looking at you. If that makes sense.
I mean, I obviously followed most of their careers, but Parky in particular, the good thing about it, Dylan, is who Wrexham play the last game of the season?
Torquay.
Yeah. And I live in Torquay now, and I'm going to be phoning him up asking for a couple of tickets. So,
Colin, I just want to ask you two questions, Dylan. I just want to ask two questions to Colin, and then feel free to come back in. So, Colin, my first question to you is, when did you know for sure that you had a team that you said that team was capable of going up to the Premiership, and it it nearly happened, finished second the following season after going up as champions? when did you know for sure that you'd got that balance right? Was it in pre-season? Was it some point during that season that you went up? When did you know? So that's my first question. And then I've got one more, and then I'm going to let Dylan have another go.
I don't think there was any particular. I think probably when we got the first promotion, you know, you knew then, but you also knew that getting promotion is not the finished job, you know, because obviously you've got to then try to introduce players that will fit in properly and improve the team. And I think we knew that was what we had to work on immediately, you know. But then as you're developing and as you're winning football matches, the confidence is you know, it rises. And every time you go out on the pitch, we did this at Chelsea when I played, and obviously when we were managing Reading there, we were expected to win. We expected them to win, you know, and we did a lot of homework on the teams we played against, but we trained and prepared to beat those teams, you know. And I see football now, and it drives me absolutely potty at times. And I don't think I could be a manager in today's game with people selecting players for you to coach and things like that. I don't think that would fit my mentality, really. You know, if I'm going to manage a football team, then I want to bring in the players that I want to coach. You know, and you know. But I think possibly when we got that promotion, and then we added to it. The confidence just stayed with them, you know, and it's really, I think it was then really that it sort of started to fall into place, yeah.
And you said that you felt that Reading team was good enough to go up to the Premier League, and it came so close to happening. Yeah. Obviously, we'll want to talk to you, Colin, about when you left during that season, because one of the questions that we'll never know the answer to is, if you and Mark had stayed, would Reading have gone up? I think that's one question that Reading fans from that time ask themselves.
Yeah, I understand that.
But talk through the circumstances, because a lot of the Reading fans don't know actually what happened when you left, because you kind of tried to stay, didn't you? I think
I did. Yeah, it was. I can't remember what day it was. I think it might have been a Wednesday or something, but. I left the training ground, and we knew this was sort of something was bubbling in the air. But I left the training ground and was basically told we were staying, you know. So I just went home, and then early that following morning, I had this call to say that we're off, and I went, "What do you mean we're off?" You know. And it just sort of happened in just a split second, really, in terms of the phone call. We're off. Get yourself over here, and blah blah blah. So I went wherever I went. I think I must have went to Reading. I can't remember now. There was a car waiting to take us up to Leicester. So it was just sort of it was like, well, everything's been sorted. You know, the Leicester City chairman had spoken, and blah blah blah. So we went up to Leicester City. We then, I think the contracts were more or less all ready, but they got us to sign, or got me to sign, a pre-contract. And then I got a call from Reading Football Club, from one of the directors, I think, who was a lawyer at that time, asking me if I could come back down and talk to them about becoming the manager. And I said, well, yeah, I would like to do that. But I said, I signed a piece of paper, and I think I knew it was a pre-contract form. And he said, could you get a copy of that over to me? And I think I did that. And then he came back and said, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about it. You're actually now signed for Leicester City. Now, what went on behind the scenes with the chairman of Leicester and John Medacey. I don't know whether anything did. I don't know. So that is really what happened, and it was just like there was some sort of dream or nightmare, whatever you want to call it, going on, and it would never happen today. And really, it shouldn't have happened then. I must say that, it's something that, and I'm not saying this because we're on the Royals 1871. I'm not saying this, but it's something that stuck with me for the whole of my life, really, because it should have been done differently, and it should have been the chairman that sorted it out between themselves. And if a deal couldn't be done, then it shouldn't have been done. But I think that the things went on behind the scenes, which I wasn't aware of. And I was Mark's second in command, if you like. I was his partner, if you like, and that's the way it was. I'm not blaming Mark. I'm just saying that this is exactly what happened,
Yeah, but Dylan, what was your recollection of that time when Mark and Colin left? Was it a big shock to the players?
Yeah, we didn't. I mean, I don't think we actually saw Mark or Colin. I don't think I actually saw them again. No. I don't think I saw. We never got the chance to say thank you. We never got the chance to say, this is the first time I've seen Colin since he left Reading.
Yeah.
Honest. And I think it's right, Colin. I've not seen you since that day. And
no, that's true. And that's where it was wrong, and that's where it was sad. And unfortunately, you can't turn back time. If you turn back time, it would never be done like that again. And,
I'm happy being in Libya on a podcast, talking to my former assistant manager, who did so much for me as a player, so much for Reading Football Club as a team, and like I say, inspired people to go on to become coaches and managers, which I am one of them.
Yeah.
And like I say, it all happened so quick, and we actually, as players, thought that if one left, Colin would step in. If Mark left, Colin would be there. He would. We all knew who ran the show. We all knew who did the coaching. We all knew, who did everything for the practical side, the theory side. Yes, the gaffer used to do he used to play five-a-sides on a Friday, which was brilliant. With the banter, and it was always the last pick in the teams. Nobody wanted him in his five-a-side teams.
Never get the ball.
But everything. We were just like, it was just like, wow! It just hits us like a 100-mile-an-hour train, because we just didn't know what was happening. We heard about it, and obviously a day later, the next thing we got Mickey Gooding, Jimmy Quinn, and Eddie Williams, because Jeff Hopkins had turned the opportunity down to be the part of the coaching administration, coaching team, and it was just like, we got two teammates now being as managers, so it was like a whirlwind 48 hours for us.
Yeah, it was totally wrong. I got to say that, and I think that if I had the experience I have now, it wouldn't have happened. But unfortunately, you're sort of. And again, I'm not blaming Mark. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that was the way it happened. Could it have been done differently? Yes, 100%. And should have been. But at the time, you just got this call, and that was it. More or less, we're off. And it was all right. People could say, well, you could have said, well, I'm not going, but I didn't know. If I didn't go, would I have stayed and still have my job? So there's all sorts of things to talk about, but it happened. It was totally the wrong way to do it, and I think that team would have gotten up. There's no doubt about that. I think the team that played at Wembley, it was very unlucky, but. Sometimes you've got to read a game when you're a coach, when you're on the side, you're so important on the side, and the best managers in the world react the quickest on the side because they've got the brain that does that. You look at the top teams now, your Man Cities. I mean, that guy don't hang around. Mourinho he makes more substitutions. You know, and these guys have got pre-planned in their head, you know, and they're not frightened to make decisions. Sometimes the coaches on the side, the managers on the side, are frightened to make decisions because if they get that wrong, they get the finger pointed at them. That's the wrong way to look at it, you know. You're there to make those decisions, you know.
Yeah, and I'll give you look. I mean, it's your childhood dream to play at Wembley Stadium, and you know when the night before, obviously I didn't play in the semi-final. I decided to go with three at the back, and especially David Lee playing right wing. They decided to go with Gilsey for his pace. Which obviously, you know, you're upset and angry, but you know you have to accept it. And you know, I remember, like you said, it was at half time. I'm on the bench. I'm on the bench.
I know you were. Yeah.
And I was up on the sidelines more than you know anybody. You know, trying to keep them, you know, the atmosphere and the energy. But I remember at half time when Lee Nogan came off. You know, and obviously Quinny was on the bench. I think once Lee Nogan came off, that gave Alan Stubbs and McAteer, David Lee, and what was the striker? I forgot the striker's name now. Scottish guy. Owen Coyle.
Oh, Coyle, yeah.
Well, that gave them the space and the opportunities because what Noggs did was stop Alan Stubbs.
Yeah.
And when Alan Stubbs came through, marauding through that midfield, then we got pulled apart.
Yeah.
You know, I think you were right there, and I saw that. You know,
well, you know, I think that's what I'm saying, Dylan. You know, you've got to recognise that, and you've got to do something about it. You know, if you're a coach or a manager on the side, and you know, if you don't act as quick as you can on that, then you're responsible for that. You know.
Yeah.
And you know, I've always said to, you know, I've always planned 2 or 3 things. You know, if they get injured, we'll do this. If things ain't working, we'll do that. If they change their formation, we'll do this. You know, do you in that situation match up? You know, I think if you're getting ripped apart, there's a reason for it. You know that you're a manager.
Yeah.
You know, and you're responsible for trying to help the players by making substitutions or making a change to the formation. You know, and
Johnny, do you want to jump back in now? Because I'll let sort of Dylan have a bit more after this, and then we haven't got too much longer, and I'll finish up with something. But Johnny, what do you want to ask?
Colin, I don't know if you still follow what goes on at Reading.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What do you make of Paul Ince and the current situation and his way of managing? And you know, you talk about substitutions and knowing what to do and how the team. You know, I know we're under a lot of different situations with the embargo, but what do you make of it all?
I mean, I think obviously Paul Ince sort of he basically earned that position, didn't he? You know, in terms of getting the job. I think that again, I don't really know how he manages. I see the results. I follow the results, obviously. So I don't really see the team play. But I think that, you know, Paul Ince, I'd assume, has always been a winner as a player, and I'd assume that he gets that over to the players. I don't know how he reacts to the team going down 1-0 or whatever. I don't know, because I don't see that. You know, I've not been back to Reading and seen the team play since I left. That's a lie. I have been back. I went back a couple of times and watched some games there, watching players actually, but that was a long time ago. But so I don't really know. I don't know. I you know, Paul, I see on the TV every so often, and he comes over quite well. But I don't know. I can't comment because I don't know his coaching methods. I don't know his style. So I can't really give you an honest answer on that. You know, I think if, you know, when you go into a football club, you analyze your players straight away, and then you try to play to their strengths. You know, you set out a team, a formation. to try and win football matches. And sometimes you've got to. I think what happens now is that too many teams try to copy the best teams, and they haven't got the players to play that way.
Yeah.
You know, I watched the game the other evening. I think it was the Fulham game, Manchester United, when they all got sent off. And then they went 2-1 down. The goalkeeper's getting it in his hands and he's trying to throw it out still. Whereas they should have just gone 4 against 4 at the front. It's the FA Cup. You're going out of it. 4 get a flick on, try and get someone in. All right, you might lose 3 or 4-1, but at least you've tried to win. You know,
it's just like you said about game management, isn't it, Colin?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
You have a backup plan and another backup plan.
Colin,
throw it out with like 8 players or whatever it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Colin. Just want to ask you. You mentioned that the way that you left Reading, you felt was wrong.
Yes.
Do you, like, looking back even now, does that mean you regret that you did that?
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I regret I did it that way. It prevented me discussing and having a chance of becoming Reading manager. Again, that would have been difficult because, well, I'd say difficult, but the contract that they offered me at Leicester, which obviously I'd signed the pre-contract, and then if I had become the manager of Reading, I would have wanted, and I'll be honest, I would have wanted some security in terms of length of contract. It's hypothetical, but that's what I would have wanted, because I wouldn't have come back and stayed on a 6-month contract or whatever, So, so there would have been a lot of discussion, but putting all that to one side, did I regret doing it the way it was done? 100% yes.
Dylan, I'm going to let you have the final question because we're coming towards the end now. So, what else do you want to ask Colin?
No, it's just like I say, it's absolutely an honour to be talking to him after so bloody long, and like I say, I can only thank him, for giving me, that inspiration to, sometimes, he's mentioning it, I've got this character and I've got this enthusiasm and energy, but sometimes you have to, as a coach, you have to be serious and you have to be nasty, and that's one of the things that Colin taught me to be, because, like I said earlier, if Colin wanted to have a pick at you, and he pointed that finger, you just sat there and put your head down and listened. You didn't look him in the eye, because he didn't want to see a reaction, he didn't want to see a smirk. He just wanted. What he did, he got the best out of you, and he got the best out of everybody. Well, the one question I wanted to ask him is that, remember that incident with Quinny and Scotty Taylor?
Yeah.
When Quinny and we, the rumours were that they wanted Quinny gone. They wanted to get Quinny out, but without Quinny, we would never have got promoted that year, I don't think.
That was a really difficult situation to deal with, to be honest. When your prize asset, if you like, has decided to stick his head into someone's face, one of the players, on the training field, which was a nasty reaction, something that, it just had to be dealt with quietly and controlled. But you then got to analyze I'll tell you who made that work for Mark and myself was Scotty Taylor. Because we didn't just speak to Jimmy Quinn.
Yeah.
Obviously, we spoke to Scotty, and Scotty understood why it happened, I think, because he's, what he was like. He was niggling away and taking whatever out of everyone, wasn't he? And I think it was the wrong time for Quinny at that stage. And he reacted, and Scotty accepted that and accepted the apology as such, didn't he?
Yeah.
Now that made that situation so much easier, because you could have suspended Quinny, you could have sacked him, but then and a lot of people have said, oh, if it had been someone else, that would have happened. I don't know, because I think full credit has to go to Scott Taylor for that, really, because he took the pressure off Mark and myself in a huge decision-making situation, and he made the decision a lot easier. And I think it was proven that, you know, Jimmy Quinn was so important to us. You know, I mean, he was just a machine, goal scoring machine. You know,
Yeah.
and he suited us. You know,
Yeah.
you know, because we talked about the balance. You know, down the left-hand side, if Jilty turned out and come back, you put it in. You know, if down the other side it happened, you know, someone else would put it in. And Quinny scored from goals that people created for him. You know, his percentage wasn't him creating goals like a Messi or something. You know, Quinny relied on the service, and the service that we gave Quinny was absolutely superb. You know, and you know, and I will say this to you as well. Thanks for what you're saying about myself, but going back to the angry bits and all that, that's because I wanted you all to be successful. You know, I didn't do it because I wanted to be some macho sort of idiot in the changing room. You know, I wanted it because I was a winner and I wanted everyone to win, you know. And if I had to say something, I said it because I wanted a reaction, and a positive reaction. And I think players respected that, you know.
No, we did. You
know, Mark would, you know, I can remember many times in the change room, and it was a little bit like a sort of like two faces, really, in terms of Mark would come and go, look, lads, we're not doing so much, you know, we're doing this, you know, and I go, and even when we were like second or top of the league or whatever, it was the same reaction. It didn't matter. Because if you weren't doing what you were capable of doing, someone had to tell you. And that was me, you know. And
and that's why that's the respect that we had for you. That's like we said. We I think we all expected that when Mark left, you were just going to jump right in there. But obviously, we knew your affiliation to him, you know, and the good stuff you'd done. You deserve. You did wherever you'd have gone. It wouldn't have mattered. You deserved it because of the football that you.
I mean, my biggest love in football was coaching, and it still is. You know, I mean, I've been a manager. I didn't enjoy being a manager as much as I enjoy being a second in command coach. You know, who was given the responsibility, and this is where I'd like to thank Mark. You know, he gave me the whole responsibility of setting out his team, and because I said to him not long after I started coaching is. Right back in the beginning, I said to him, well, you've got to tell me how you want your team to play, and I will make sure that will happen on the training field. If you want to go back to front, I'll have to put on different training sessions. You know, I've seen coaches, I used to go to hundreds and thousands of coaching sessions and watch these coaches coaching, 1-2s, all this and that, and go and watch them play on a Saturday, and the bloody ball would go from back to front. And I said, why are you coaching that, you know? And it's pathetic, you know. How can a coach that in the week and then set their team out to go back to front and shout on the side, miss the midfield out, you know? And no, drives me.
I'll tell you what, Colin, and I think you'll agree with this, Dylan. It's been fantastic to get your take on your time at Reading. We'd also, I don't know if you're still in touch with Mark, but we'd also love to hear it from Mark's point of view as well. So if that's a possibility, that'd be fantastic. I don't know if you're still in touch with him, but if we can get Mark on as well, that.
No, Mark. It's another sad one, you know. When Mark left Wolves, it was ironic actually, and this was where it was slightly different, well, a lot different to Reading. When Mark was told that he was leaving Wolves by the chairman, I wasn't told that I was leaving. So I can remember it clear as today, because Mark and I are very, very close, you know, friends and family, everything. And I said, Mark, I don't know what to do here. And he said, well, what have they said? I said, well, they've not said anything. You know, they're not sacking me. I said, and I can't afford to just pack my job in, you know. And he said, no, I understand that. So we went into his office. We got 2 black bin bags, stuck all this stuff in that. Then I went back to his house. met his wife and family were there, and we sat for must have been a couple of hours talking about it. And I said, like, you know, I don't know what to do, Mark. And he said, well, if they offer you the job, you know, that's up to you. Like, it's entirely up to you. I said, well, I can't just turn that down, and I can't afford not to have a salary coming in, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, that's fine. He said, no problem at all. I said, fine. So I went in the next day, and they said, oh, we'd like you to take over the team. Of course, we went. So we took over the team. I couldn't believe it. We were playing Bristol City away. I took the team down to Bristol City away, and we won 6-0. And I went in afterwards and said, look, that result's not me. That's the lads for Mark, you know, and blah, blah, blah. And then I got so engrossed in the job there that 2 months later, the secretary said to me, have you spoken to Mark? I said, no, I haven't. I said, I've been so like streamlined looking, you know, like trying to improve the team, do this, whatever. He said, oh, I think you ought to give him a ring, because he'd had an experience at West Ham when Harry Redknapp and Billy Bonds did the same thing happened, and they fell out. So I phoned Mark, and Jackie, his wife, answered the phone, and Mark wouldn't speak to me. And I've never really spoken to him since, other than when we took Wolves, I think it was Wolves, or one of the teams I managed, down to Millwall when Mark was Millwall manager, and we just said hello in not in passing, but in the corridor, you know, and it was sad, you know.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
Really sad, you know. And I've got nothing to hide, you know. People were I know that there were a couple of the youth team coaching that talking behind my back, is implying that I'd gone behind Mark's back. Well, Dylan will you 1,000,000%. That would never ever in a million years happen.
Never.
You know? And but I've learned because I've got the sack in management a few times, and I think what you tend to do in the early stages. So the first time you get sacked, you try to blame other people, and really you should analyze yourself. And I think this was the first time Mark had got the sack. I did the same when I got the sack. I started to say, well, was it him or whatever? No, I was the manager. You know, I had I could change things. I could change this and do that if I wanted to. And that comes with experience. And sometimes when you get the sack, you're younger and you've not got that experience. So I think maybe you look to blame other people, and I've only picked that up since, you know, I've experienced getting the sack here, there, and everywhere. You know, so yeah.
Colin, thanks ever so much for that. I certainly didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh, that's amazing.
Thanks ever so much for your time, Colin. It's been brilliant to have you on.
No problem.
Appreciate you coming on, and perhaps you'll actually meet up with Dylan at some point after all those.
Yeah, if he can get 3 tickets down to Torquay, he can come and stay with me.
Let's all go down though. Let's all meet up down there. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Colin.
Yeah.